it truly beggars belief, and I'm glad a much better outcome has been reached, because these kinds of crimes, violence against women and sexual violence, are of the utmost seriousness. We need to treat them with the utmost seriousness, and the consequences, the criminal consequences and sanctions must match the seriousness of the offences. And I'm glad that we've seen action and that those individuals will now be going to prison, and I hope that provides an ounce of justice and hope for those who've been affected.
Keir Starmer's apologised to the victims of historical forced adoptions in England and Wales. An estimated 185,000 babies were removed between 1949 and 1976.
Mr. Speaker, what happened to them and to tens of thousands of mothers, children and families should never have happened. It is a stain on our history. Mothers, many young, vulnerable and without support, were coerced, bullied or misled into feeling that they had no choice but to have their children taken away from them. What a thing to do.
That's Sir Keir Starmer. We can speak to Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for joining us. The Prime Minister said today, the shame was never yours, the shame is ours. It has taken more than half a century for a government to say that out loud.
It's taken a very long time, and it is long overdue, and the campaigners have been tireless in making the case for why this is necessary, and I'm really pleased that today that long overdue apology was made by the Prime Minister in the House of Commons. We were joined by campaigners and many of those who've been calling for this for a long time. The sadness is that some of those who've campaigned so hard to deliver this reality, some of them are no longer with us because of the time it's taken, the passage of time. But I want to pay tribute to them, because a grave injustice was done to countless women, families and their wider families, women, children and their wider families, and it is right that today we recognise that as a state.
Has it been possible to identify why it has taken this long? Because it sometimes becomes a bit of a recurring theme, doesn't it, when there has been a great state atrocity such as this, that it takes a long time for there to be a resolution. And I wonder if you've identified why that has been in this case.
I'm not seeking to be partisan about this, but there were opportunities for previous governments to come to this conclusion that this Labour government has arrived at. They will have had their own reasons for not taking this course of action, but I am pleased that this government is acting to right this terrible injustice and this terrible wrong. Campaigners have been trying to raise the profile of this for many, many years. Some of the people I've been with today have been campaigning on this for, over 20 years. It has been more recently, particularly with the report from the Joint Committee on Human Rights, that there was a particular push to deliver this historic apology. But it's only this Labour government that has finally acted to make this a reality, and whatever has happened in the past, we can now move forward, and I want to keep working with the campaigners to deliver not just the apology but also the wider support that they will continue to need, given the harm and the trauma that was caused not just to those mothers whose babies were ripped away from them, but also to those children who are now adults who have experienced significant trauma because of the circumstances of their adoption.
Yeah. Let's go on to some of the other issues around this afternoon. The Court of Appeal has intervened and ruled that 2 teenage boys must go to custody in the aftermath of the rape case that we've been reporting over the last number of months in Fording Bridge. The original trial judge said he wanted to avoid criminalising these children unnecessarily. How is it possible that a senior Crown Court judge looked at 10 counts of rape and thought a custodial sentence was unnecessary?
Well, it truly beggars belief, and I'm glad a much better outcome has been reached, because these kinds of crimes, violence against women and sexual violence, are of the utmost seriousness. We need to treat them with the utmost seriousness, and the consequences, the criminal consequences and sanctions must match the seriousness of the offences. And I'm glad that we've seen action and that those individuals will now be going to prison, and I hope that provides an ounce of justice and hope for those who've been affected.
There is an ideological and philosophical argument to have around this, because the boys' lawyers had argued the original non-custodial sentence was a rigorous structured programme to ensure they became safe adults. And so there is a question here about whether the Court of Appeal is saying that punishment trumps rehabilitation in this case.
Well, I believe you can do both, but I do believe crimes of this kind deserve a custodial sentence, and not just in order to mark the seriousness, but also to send a very, very clear message to anyone else thinking of acting in this way that they will get a firm penalty for it.
The Lady Chief Justice Baroness Carr said today that the judge undervalued the seriousness of the offending. You've already been critical, indeed, of that initial verdict from that first judge. Is that judge fit to serve?
That's for the relevant bodies to consider, and I haven't read in detail the ruling that you just read out there, but it is concerning that a decision was taken not to award a custodial sentence given the severity of this, and I'm glad that the Supreme Court have taken a different view.
Yeah. Shall we go on to consider the release of Shabir Ahmed today, the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang? Conservative MP Katie Lamb says the idea that somebody as vile as Shabir Ahmed could be allowed to stay in this country thanks to a loophole in a decades-old law designed for a totally different context is appalling. Nothing is actually stopping the government from changing the law. The government makes law and Parliament makes law. When will it be changed?
Look, I don't want this man in the country more than anybody else does, and these are utterly sickening and horrific crimes, and we're ruling absolutely nothing out. So I know the Home Secretary is reviewing this urgently to see what else we need to do in order to make sure that this individual is deported.
Sarah Robotham, who's the whistleblower who exposed the Rochdale sex abuse ring, was on this programme about half an hour ago, and she questioned actually why there was this appetite to deport this man and make him a threat to women and girls in Pakistan and make him someone else's problem. Well, I suppose the implication is that she worried the UK would be shirking its responsibility.
I don't agree. He's been in prison for a significant period of time here in the UK, and as he comes to the end of his sentence, I believe he should be deported, and we will do whatever we can to try and make sure that happens.
Right. Why do you want him to go to Pakistan and make him someone else's problem?
Well, he is someone else's problem, and therefore it's right that he is deported. I mean, that's just the long and short of it.
But does that not suggest the system here has not worked? He served 14 years here, and now you want him out of the country. Sarah Robotham did question that.
Well, it's not unusual for people to serve prison sentences here in the UK and then at the end of their sentence be deported to another country. We've increased deportations of foreign national offenders. They've gone up significantly. We're working faster to make sure that happens more quickly. But in this case, because of the complexity of it, it isn't easy and straightforward. But the Home Secretary is reviewing all of the options to make sure that we are in a position to deport this individual.
Do you know when that review will conclude?
She'll be working as quickly as she can, I'm sure of that, because she, like all of us, will be horrified by what we're seeing and given the awful and appalling nature of the crimes this man committed.
Do you think this represents a system that looks after whistleblowers, victims and survivors?
We've still got a long, long way to go to make sure we've got a society, a criminal justice system, a whole response from all of us actually to take far more seriously violence against women and girls. We frequently don't believe women when they come forward. We minimise the abusive experience. We don't give them the support they need. This Labour government is determined to turn that around. We've got a big commitment to halve violence against women and girls. I've also brought forward a key piece of legislation that represents the biggest upgrade to child protection legislation that we've seen in decades. That's about acting to keep children safe more quickly, but we also in parallel need to ensure that victims get support through that criminal justice system, dealing with the huge court backlog that we faced where people were waiting months and years on end for their case to come to court. And at the end of that, I want to see people that commit the worst kinds of crimes against children, against girls, against women, against children, going to prison and going to prison for a long time.
Now, Bridget Phillipson, we have talked about some really heavy things over the last few minutes, and there's no particularly easy way for me to make this handbrake turn into discussing the World Cup. So that's the best way I could think of doing it, and here we find ourselves. I have two things to ask.
I thought that's where you were headed, yes.
Yes, good. The first thing I want to ask, is this government bringing emergency legislation tomorrow to allow pubs to open overnight, basically, to accommodate the football?
So we've already taken action to make sure that pubs can stay open longer.
Are you going further?
Give you specifics or detail. Well, we're looking at all of it to make sure that if we do need to go further, we're in a position to do so. But this is currently a matter that is being considered, so I can't give you precise detail on it at the moment. But of course, we want people to be able to enjoy watching the match, whether that's down the pub or at home.
The SNP dished out a bank holiday in Scotland.
As is their choice. But I just want to see us.
Are they more fun than you?
Well, there's a lot of words I could use to describe certain things the SNP have got up to recently, and criminal might be closer to it rather than fun, but we'll maybe leave that one to one side. Look, we all want to get behind
some members of the SNP have been guilty of criminal behaviour rather than the whole thing.
Yes, although it would be nice if we could have a wider investigation into the wider conduct of the SNP. But anyway, back onto the football. Look, it was a great result last night, and we're all really excited about the match going into Sunday, and he is hoping it's a great success.
And kids, they should stay off school on Monday, shouldn't they? They should stay up all night, enjoy the football, and get the day off. That's the right thing here.
No, I don't agree. Look, parents will make decisions about whether their children stay up, how they manage bedtime. I'm not going to insert myself into a discussion amongst families about how they do that. It is a very late kick-off. I do recognise that, and it probably will end up being too late for some children who probably will have fallen asleep on the settee at about 10 o'clock, never mind managing to get to 1 o'clock in the morning. But I trust parents can sort all of that out, but I do hope children are back in school on the Monday.
On that, may I ask what will be happening in your household?
I would like to stay up, but I'm going to have to try and navigate a bit of time to have a nap before we get to 1 o'clock, I think. Otherwise, I'll probably just fall asleep on the settee watching it if I'm not careful. So even some of the games that we've seen, even where they're kind of 10 o'clock kickoffs, we've struggled a bit.
Will they be doing a disco nap as well?
Well, I'll leave the choice up to them, but I can guarantee they'll be in school on Monday morning. I can tell you that one for sure.
Okay, no choice. Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.